Welcome to AUMARCHE, and today we're gonna invite Karina to that room to talk about her like graduate collection, her vision, and her design process and her experience. So, for people that who don't know about Karina, like, can you maybe introduce yourself a little bit, your background, and everything you want us to know?
Sure. So I am a 25-year-old fashion design student graduating this year. And originally I'm from Russia. So I moved to England when I was 9 with my parents. And I got into art and fashion because when I was learning English, the best way to express myself was through, painting. And also I do music on the side as well. So just doing things with my hands. And yeah, that got me really interested in fashion and art, and that's how I got onto the fashion print pathway specifically, so I can do paintings and I can do really textural and intricate prints and stuff as well in my collection.
So yeah, that sounds really interesting. Before I head up to like the fashion art that bit, I really want to know, like, because I know that your work placements is really interesting. It's really different from like quite a few other like design students. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I did my main work placement on Savile Row, which they don't take interns or students or anything like that normally, but I just ended up emailing a ton of times until they finally replied and were like, "Okay, stop emailing us. You can come for 2 weeks." And I came for 2 weeks and I kind of tried to prove myself to them because they only take apprentices. They only take people they know are going to stay in the industry because the industry is so small.
Yeah.
But luckily, because I'm hard worker, so I was working for kind of 8 to 10 hours a day, from sort of 9 to sometimes even like 8, 9 when they closed. And I would go around and ask the tailors, and some of them had been there for 50 years. And I was in the same workshop that Alexander McQueen worked in, so some of the tailors knew him personally. And I also learned some military embroidery there. So really it was more like I would come up to a specific person. I go, "Can I learn this?" And they go, "Yeah, sure. Here's a canvas, you can pad stitch. Here's some military embroidery. This is how it's done," which is why it was an amazing work placement. Because instead of me being, being sent on errands or like to get coffee or like to, sew, like hand sew a tag, I was actually learning these amazing skills. Which I know a little bit about. I know it takes years to hone those skills, but at least I got some learning experience firsthand, and that was amazing.
Yeah. So you mean the military clothing is almost a little bit like those like prints and like those like clothing, right? Like the red pig coat and the huge. Oh wow, that's really impressive. So I mean, what inspired you to like want to actually take the work placement at Savile Row?
Well, it was a few things. The work placement before that, I was working for a celebrity stylist, and I would go into the jewelry stores, which were right close to Savile Row, and I'd always walk on Savile Row, and I'd see the tailors working, because you can see if you look down them working in their workshops. And I was so...
You mean the lower ground floor?
Yeah, the lower ground floor. Yeah. I'd be like, I just want to be in that world. I really, because they just look like they are absolutely in love with their work and what they do, which is, reminiscent of me with my work, because I do really, really love what I do. And so I really wanted to have conversations with them and talk with them and get to know them and also learn stuff from them. And that's what inspired me to kind of go on Savile Row. And of course, it ended up being a huge inspiration in my graduate collection with the craftsmanship of it all, and just working with your hands rather than using technology nowadays, just working with your hands and making everything from embellishment to, my textiles with the hot glue. I know we're going to be talking about my graduate collection later.
Yeah.
A little like teaser. But yeah, just working with the hands and just dedicating all your emotions and your passion into, your work.
Yeah. So before I go on to your graduate collection, I want to ask one more question about your placement, because that's really fascinating, because I have no idea what it is. So how it is like to work there? What do you do normally in Savile Row?
So you mean like what a normal day for me would be like?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would come in any time really. So I'd come in between 9 and 10, quite late, but I'd stay late.
Yeah.
And then I would work. So they have head cutters who cut and who take measurements of the clients and pick the cloths that they're going to choose and do a suit in, like a lovely wool, cashmere, whatever.
Yeah.
And then they have the undercutters, which are like the apprentices. So I spend time with them because they would be teaching me everything that they've learned so far from the head cutters. And this would be like the cutting kind of studio workshop. And adjacent to that would be the tailoring workshop, who would be actually making the garments. So the cutters would cut the cloth, and I'd have to transfer it between one workshop and the other. I mean, it's just 2 different rooms. Sure, and I'd also be in charge of doing all the trimmings. So in a suit, you have things like shoulder pads, you have collar canvas, you have Melton, which is like felt kind of wool thing that goes
to put it underneath. Yeah,
exactly. And then a ton of canvas, like canvassing, Demet, horsehair canvas, like all these things that all go in the suit. And obviously buttons and things like that as well, and thread and buttonhole thread, so much stuff.
Wow.
So what I'd have to do is I'd have to cut everything correctly, and of course, because it was the bespoke suit department, so everything was completely unique to each customer. I'd also have to do these typewritten labels, which were again unique with the customer's name and who made the clothes, which was you know, I love that. And I'd have to pass that on. That would be like the daily job. But then when I had time, I would then wander around and kind of learn skills and I learned how to make my bespoke jacket, and I actually ended up making my bespoke jacket being there because I come in on Saturdays as well.
Do you know how to like do like the pattern without having a block already? Just like use, because I saw a lot of.
I mean, I was taught how to do it. I probably now I need like a few pointers, but yeah, I was taught how to do that.
It is so fascinating when I see people do that. I was like, oh my god, I want to be one of that kind of people that who can just like draw the pattern out from like a small like a chalk thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's just a set of measurements, and then you sort of tailor them to the person's body. And actually, a lot of what I've learned is everyone's shoulders are, you know,
a little bit different.
They're different, and the way you sit, the way you slouch or whatever, and the Savile Row picks that up in your fitting, so they see how you naturally stand, and they cut the jacket exactly so the pattern is uneven basically, which is amazes me, because normally it's like, oh, this is the center front and this is like symmetrical, but it's not there at all.
Oh, that's very interesting. So you said that like your workplace may influence you a lot about on your like final collection. Can you tell us a little bit more about your final collection?
Sure. So craftsmanship, obviously, I'd mentioned before, and I love time consuming things. I have clearly a lot of patience because I love making really intricate and time consuming things, and Savile Row is a great example of that, because each suit takes, you know, like 3 weeks to a month to make. So from that, I thought in my final collection, I am going to use some of the techniques that I learned. And it was, you know, something basic from like how to sew on buttons properly for a bespoke suit jacket, which sounds silly, you know, you do sew buttons and it's not hard. But for me, it was kind of all the different lengths of the button, of the shank, of the neck of it, completely unique to each jacket. And it was, to me, it was complicated enough. So I was like, right, I'm going to do something with buttons. And then there was military embroidery, and I was like, I need to do something with Russian braiding, which is the braid that you do for military embroidery. And then there was also the pad stitching, which kind of looks like embroidery. It's the zigzag lines that you put on a canvas. So it was all these techniques that I kind of learned there, and I was like, I need to somehow show them in my collection, and just kind of do, you know, like a ode to these beautiful techniques. So then lockdown happened, and I couldn't, you know, a lot of the printing and things that I could do at uni, I couldn't do anymore. So I had to find different ways. And that's where I started experimenting with things like hot glue, matchsticks, because I could just order them to my house, and you know, it was easy, and I could still kind of show, because the matchsticks sort of like the stitching that I had in the pad stitching before.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They're and then I made some polymer clay buttons as well, because I worked with buttons so much on Savile Row. I was like, I really want to make my own buttons and do a whole garment which is adorned with these clay buttons. And that's how it came about from Savile Row.
Sounds interesting. So your design approach is actually from this craftsmanship. So like, is there any like other vision that you have it towards your like final collection, for example, or like your previous collections?
What you mean, craftsmanship in my previous collections, or?
Yeah, I mean, just wonder like the whole in general, like the intake of how do you get inspired to create your whole collection?
How I get inspired. Okay. So this is going to be, this is probably one of the weirdest answers, but I don't do toiling, right? So I don't understand it. I can't do it. When I think of something in my head, I have to make it, and this is the final garment. So honestly, it's the weirdest thing. Like, it's easier for me to say you have to make a garment in a week, you have to do it now, think of a design now, and something will pop in my brain. So it's always been like with all different projects and all the dresses and all collections that I've ever made. Well, this is my first technical collection, but like, with pieces that I've made before, I always find that first kind of, if it's a 3-week project, first 2 weeks for me, I will be sitting around with a pencil thinking, what am I doing? And then the time pressure when it comes to it, final week, I'm like, right, let's make this. And in about like 10-15 minutes, I will think of the idea. I honestly, I can't explain how it works in my brain, but things like, and then I'll do like a quick sample. But that whole thing of university students, spending like a month on a project and doing sampling, doing research, materials, all that, I can't do that. I'm so bad at that.
Yeah.
Come in my brain, the idea right now, and I'll do it. And sometimes it works really well, other times it doesn't, but that's that's that. But I've never, like, materials research, designer research, I've never been good. Well, I can do it, but I'll never use it for my projects.
Yeah, so it's almost like you sort of kind of draw like your design in your brain or like in your mind about how it could be like. So it's almost like you got like all the inspiration from your daily life-ish, and then you just use that as like, just, I don't know how, like, think about that, how it worked the best in your brain, and then you got your final outcome.
It's a subconscious process because like, sure, there are designers I like, I love Daniel Roseberry Schiaparelli. I really, really like, what Gucci's doing at the moment, some of their stuff. There are people that I can say, oh, I like their designs. I love, obviously, Alexander McQueen, I love Tom Brown, like all these people, but I don't look at their work and think, this is going to influence my designs. It's more like, here are some matchsticks, what can I do out of them? Like,
okay,
putting them into forms. Or like, I'll see a really nice textile, and so it's just really random things that
like got inspired by the items in.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to relate to a topic or a theme, or like, I'm doing this collection. Like, all different random things that I'll take photos of that don't seem relevant at the time, and then I'll look back and I'll be like, oh, maybe I can use something like this.
Oh, I love that. I mean, that's really fascinating. It's almost like you use the garment to express yourself in a way of
definitely. Yeah,
that's really interesting. So that's a little bit like artists. I mean, you said about like you care really a lot about art and craftsmanship. Like, can you tell us a little bit more about your ideas towards art and craftsmanship and design, fashion in general?
Sure. So I've also just kind of remembered that, you talked about inspiration, what inspires me. A lot of the work, the way I describe my work would be aestheticism. I'm a huge fan of that movement, and just sort of art for the sake of it being beautiful, and for the sake of, like, without it having a specific like political or any of those kind of messages, just making it and that's where craftsmanship for me comes in hugely, because it's kind of like therapy, making this stuff and taking loads of time to do it, and then creating something that people can go, wow, this took a lot of time. That's why I do all the stuff that I do.
I love the idea, because I mean, I used to internship, it's all like sort of kind of texture based. it is really time consuming, but when you actually have the outcome, it was almost like an art piece in a way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that. So how do you think about the future of craftsmanship?
Well, hopefully it'll stay alive. Because, I mean, listen, technology is great and
Yeah,
it's clearly evolving, it's developing, and technology can do pretty much everything that a human can do now, especially with sewing and all that stuff. But I feel like when it's done by a person, it just feels completely different and each garment is unique. And that kind
hmm,
of, it's like a painter. We're still going to have painters, hopefully, in like 400 years who paint things, even though
yeah,
a computer can do it for them
hmm,
now. But there's just like an element of like authenticity and just feeling more personal, like each thing. So that's why I really hope Savile Row is slowly dying away, because it's just things can be reproduced so quickly, and suits can
yeah.
be much quicker. But I think as long as there's like a group of people who are like in love with what they do and their handcrafts, then it will carry on and it won't die away.
I don't think it will die because I feel like, yes, I mean, now like technology is kind of on trends. Like everyone like really focus on technologies. They have like virtual fashion, whatever, right? That kind of thing. But in reality, I think like more and more people start to understand, like start to actually like pay attention on the craftsmanship, for example, especially with like COVID. Right now, like I mean, the lockdown, a lot of people cannot go out and just start to make their things, like just be like, I don't know, like very like creative to make the thing that they used to can get in store. And people start to understand that, oh, like fast fashion is probably not really the best for environment. So they probably will start refocus on like, oh, maybe we don't need that many clothes. Maybe like we can have some sort of kind of interesting clothing that actually take a little bit longer time to make, or the materials actually more important than we thought. I think that's like, I mean, that's my own personal idea. I don't know. It's that can't be like the actual ideas of like other people's, but I think that the craftsmanship really is important. So, I mean, you said about craftsmanship, like, do you think it in some way that future of craftsmanship can merge with tech, for example, or merge with like evolve? How could it evolve in a way?
I mean, obviously, things like laser cutting, you can do drawings, you can do hand drawings,
Mm-hmm.
um, and prints and things, and have them laser cut, and that's kind of like a merging of two worlds, right?
Yeah.
In your 3D printing, you can still draw up your model, whatever you want, or the jewelry, and it will still have that element, I guess.
Mm,
That's the
yeah.
best way of, combining
It's
them.
almost like Iris Verherben. Like her work, a lot of the time she used 3D printing, but in the end, they still need to be sewed by hand to the garment itself. So it's almost like, yeah, I think that's really interesting. So how about your Met Gala dress?
My Met Gala dress that didn't make it to the Met Gala, but was
It was featured,
it was
yeah.
featured exactly. So that's all that matters. So yeah, this was like the other half of my year where I was meant to travel to New York to
Uh-huh.
assist stylist Jason Rembert, and he does a lot of he's amazing. He's one of my favorite stylists.
Yeah,
He styled, Ezra Miller's look with the eyes and the corset for the Met Gala.
yeah.
Did like a suit, and he did like Gigi and Zayn when Zayn had like a metal arm, and
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
yeah, so he's done loads of kind of really big people and like really cool looks. So I was gonna start anyway. Long story short, I was meant to go there and I couldn't go because that was when the first lockdown happened.
Mm-hmm,
And I was going to assist exactly for the Met Gala with him.
mm-hmm,
But when I was stuck at home and I
yeah.
saw that Vogue posted this challenge of, well, Met Gala's cancelled this year. Why don't you recreate at home your favorite past Met Gala looks? And you have a week to do it in, which is perfect for me because, like I said before, I'm like, I need a week. That's all I need. I
Mm-hmm,
can't sit around and think, oh, what am I going to do? So yeah, and I didn't want to make a look out of fabric because I wanted it to be huge, and I didn't want to waste that much money on it because it was just a week's
yeah.
challenge. And like, if it wasn't going to be featured, like I didn't want to spend a lot of money on it. And I had a pack of red paper lying on, like in my work studio on the floor, unused for literally probably 8 to 10 years. It was there. It was so old. And I was like, you know what? It's time I used it. So I bought a little bit more paper, but really, I think I spent about £30 on the whole project, on that whole dress. So yeah, most of my money went on glue sticks, because that's what I used to glue the paper on. And yeah, because it was red, I had to pick a red look, so that was kind of really pre-chosen for me. And I picked Cardi's because it was so huge and really complicated, and I was like, great, testing my patience again. And obviously it had all the feathers and embellishments. So it was a challenge for me to kind of think, how can I recreate this in paper? And I worked 12 hours a day for 6 days. And I started posting on TikTok, and that's when it started kind of going a bit viral. And I got like 300,000 views in, from one video in a couple of days. So I was like, okay, well, I'm getting somewhere, this is good. This could be good. And then I posted it on the day that you had to kind of post it. And then Billy Porter put it in his story, because he kind of started the challenge with Vogue. So he was one of the main people. And Vogue got in contact with me, and then the Met Museum got in contact with me, and they were like, we want to feature you and we want to interview you. And like, Vogue's great, but like when it was the Met Museum, for me, that was, because I'd love to have, one of my goals to have my work shown there in one of their exhibitions at some point. See, I really want to attend the Met Gala itself, and design for some of the stars that attend it. So that was kind of the big thing for me. And after that, I tried to reach out and tried to make the dress go viral as well. And then the BBC featured me and did an exclusive interview, which was really nice. And that was that whole dress. And actually, I'm so happy I did it, because it was during that time where like we all felt a bit demotivated, because we were like, what's happening? And it really helped get me through lockdown and doing that all. And it also helped inspire me for my collection, because I ended up using also DIY like materials for my collection.
So it's almost like you are recreating a dress with your art, like craftsmanship. It's still like art craftsmanship in the way. I think that's really cool. So what do you think of you? Okay, because you're about to graduate, right? So what's your vision after you graduate?
Well, after I hand my work in, I'm only going to hand in 3 or 4 looks for my graduate. So over the summer, I'm going to be kind of working and making more looks for that graduate collection, because now that I have hot glue matchsticks, I have felt, I have shapes, I have prints, I have all these different things that I feel like that collection is not made up of 3 looks. It should be made up of all those ideas. So I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to hopefully be making kind of 10 to 12 looks in total. And I'm going to try and find a way to showcase them in Fashion Week. That's kind of the big goal. And also, the Met Gala is now happening in September, so I'm going to pop off to New York and see if I can, shadow whether it's Andrew Bolton or someone whom I can learn from as well, and be involved somehow in that Met Gala. And then in February, I plan to launch officially my label. So that's the plan.
Wow. That's very excited, like all the plans that you want to do. I think so. In a way, your brand or like what you want to do in the future is almost like couture in a way, is it? Or is it?
So I want to specialize in bespoke red carpet wear and bespoke garments, which are obviously unique. Like we said before, I mean, it sounds pretentious, but like art pieces, like each one of them.
Yeah.
But then I also definitely, you have to make money some way. So because it takes so long to make these pieces. I also want to make a demi couture line of. So it's not like ready to wear, but it's more like exclusive than that. But it's still more affordable than having like a bespoke, completely garment.
I love that. So yeah, that sounds like art because you are really like you love like all art or craftsman oriented kind of thing, and then you actually like continuing doing the sort of kind of inspiration from your like Savile Rows and make it into some sort of kind of couture or semi couture. I think that's really interesting. I'm very excited. And what you're doing right now with a hot glue, I think that's really interesting. And I mean, it's almost like using hot glue to create this kind of like new texture or like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's really interesting. Yeah.
And it's recyclable because you can use hot glue, you can put it back into hot glue, always.
Oh,
So
that's very interesting. I love that. I mean, I never thought that you could do that, but wow, I mean, that's really good things to know. So, that's great. So the last question is something new because that's the whole like topic of the issue. So can you tell us something new that you learned, you experienced, or whatever this day?
sure. So this is a lesson that I'm going to forever repeat to
Mm-hmm.
probably in like every single person who asks me this question, what I've learned, or like,
Yeah.
you know, when I was in Savile Row and I was trying to make my bespoke jacket,
Yeah.
I do say I'm a perfectionist, and I kept telling the head cutter, who, by the way, I didn't even mention, he's an iconic man. He's called David Taub, and he's known as like one of the best cutters on Savile Row. But
Mm-hmm.
I was telling him, I was like, I need this to be perfect. I need this to be like looking like the best thing I've ever made. And he kind of turned around to me. He laughed and he was like, "Why do you want it to be perfect?" And I was like, "What do you mean? Why do I want it to be perfect? I want it to reflect, how well I can do the work." And he was like,
Yeah.
"But if you reach perfection, if you make something perfect, the only road is downhill from there. Like, because you can't beat that." And that
Yeah.
made me think, and I was like, you know what? That's such a good idea. And I've now really applied that to my collection and to probably my entire life. It's the best
Mm-hmm.
advice I've probably ever received from a fashion guru. That whatever you make, it's not about it being perfect. It's not about getting, every stitch perfect. It's about just, doing the best that you can and just loving and being in love with your own work. And perfection's just silly.
Yeah, I mean, I love that because in some way, not being perfect is another way to perfect for me. Because I mean, in some way, I love this kind of like sort of kind of still little touch, human touch in every single thing, and like being imperfect, is almost like sort of kind of enhance that to make it more perfect. So, yeah, I love the ideas. So yeah, I think it is really good. I learned so much from you today, from like the experience from Savile Rows and like Met Gala dresses and how you want to do in the future. I'm really keep looking forward to that. So thank you very much for coming today to have this like interview with me and then have a little talk. I learned so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very
Thank
honored. So thank you.